English for specific purposes. I hope I'm audible and visible to everyone. Am I?
Yes,
Am I?
ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
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 ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So if there's any problem at any point of time, kindly do not hesitate to say that to me. You're all esteemed colleagues, so once again, please, this session should be a very comfortable one. So that's the first point. So probably throughout this entire course, where the general idea is on communicative English, you must have covered everything. So what I thought is that I looked from the long list of the participants, and I saw that you come from various subjects. You teach various subjects, say business management to computer sciences to botany to Hindi to history, maybe everything possible. So basically, I thought that if I could probably relate English communication to your subjects as well. So today, therefore, my focus would be English for specific purposes. That would mean a kind of a register that we create, a kind of a register of English that we relate to, which pertains or is relevant to the specific subject, right? So if it's life science, if it's environmental science, the kind of English that we would be over here using, right? So once again, good morning and assalamu alaikum, because everybody I see is still writing. So with that, if you give me a minute kindly and allow me to share my PPT. So kindly give me a minute. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
So here we go. And please tell me also whether if the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It is
Now
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
visible. Yes. So and if I am also visible, because that's also very important. So the me
Yes,
and
ma'am.
the
You are visible
Yes,
too.
ma'am. You are also usable.
okay. So if it's so, then you see, I have kind of slightly modified the general topic which was given to you. So it's English for specific purposes, approach to develop language skills while facilitating core subjects in the classroom. So you see, what I am approaching is that basically I understand that you are teachers, but you are not teachers of English. And I suppose that while I am supposed to also facilitate you in developing your communicative skills, I also see this, the other approach is that whether you can use your own subject in developing yourself as well as your young students or children whom you teach in your classroom. So your subject, through your subject, you develop your English and the students' English. If that's possible, let's see how or whether that's possible at all, right? So let me then move on, right? So you see, the next slide, which you are the slides moving once again, because when I move the slides, I won't be able to see, whether I'm
Yes, ma'am.
are they moving? Okay.
Yes.
So you see this lecture, 1 hour lecture, talk. It will be interactive, of course, but this is how it's divided. So I'll first be talking a little about this ESP. What is this ESP? Something new for us. Probably many of you know. Okay, through these 23, sessions or whichever sessions, many of you might be knowing. And I will, within the concept of ESP, I'll be also talking about what is the difference between, this English of Keats and Shelley and Shakespeare, which we do at the classroom, and the technical, usually the technical communication or the specific academic communication with English, which you do at the classroom, right? What are the kind of approaches to teaching, learning, which can be taken? That means while you teach, if you can learn and you can make your students learn. What are the kind of materials that are used for English for specific purposes. I'll show you some samples which pertains to your subjects, and how you see evaluation can also be done where you can actually carry on with your own subject, with the objective that you are teaching your own subject, not teaching English at all, and through that again, I repeat, develop your own self, right? Now you see in the topic slide, if I can take you once again back to the topic slide, you see, I have mentioned something is core subjects. By core subjects, I would mean once again that I am referring to your subject, the parent subject, your own subjects which you teach. Now, what is therefore this ESP? If you can look into what I am showing you now on the screen, you will see ESP is a very broad umbrella term. So English for specific purposes. And it can be actually divided and subdivided into various things, right? But we will today be actually interested in this particular domain, and that too part of this domain. It's a very broad idea. So on the left, you see English for academic purposes. Now, please understand, when we think of ESP, we actually think of ESP from the school level to the adult learners, to the learners at the college, at the university, also for, training like yours. Okay, so at that point of level, usually for adult learners, but can we kind of negotiate a path, right? So on the left, you see there are kind of, there's a kind of a list where we have English for science and technology, where you will see in the samples I've extensively used that. For business and economics, for medical purposes. So, those who are going to become a doctor, they will also need for law. So there's specific vocabulary, register, and structure for each of them. So we are going to look into those, right? And on the right, you see ESP also refers to English for occupational purposes. That would mean, you as a botany teacher, you as a computer science teacher, you as probably a physics teacher or life science teacher. What kind of English will you need, right? English can also be for professional purposes, like say journalism. Say somebody is a reporter and you are probably gearing your students to become reporters. So what kind of English will you need? Also for vocational, somebody wants to become a technician. What kind of English will you need, right? And you see there are various branches. Under vocational ESL, you see two very important points which I'll be talking about is that, say, you are going in for, seeking an employment for a particular kind of a profession or a vocation. You will need a kind of English, not exactly general English, which you will need, of course, for, this phatic ideas like good morning, good afternoon, and good noon, okay? But you see, you will also need what we call as quote-unquote standard phraseology. Standard, that would mean certain phrases, certain kind of chunks of language which are typical to your subject, okay? Cluster is actually related to AI, which we will be slightly glossing, okay? Occupational specific, that would mean more and more. So once you get an employment, what kind of occupational language or English will you need? And you see workplace. This last one, as I drove my cursor, this basically would mean in the workplace. What is the kind of English that you would need, which is a formal English? And something probably which you have been, I don't know, somebody will tell me. Have you heard this word, grapevine communication? Anybody? Have you been told throughout this, the couple of days session?
No, ma'am.
No. My slides are not visible. They are gone.
Visible, ma'am. Visible.
Okay. I can't see. That's why. Okay. So this grapevine is basically very interesting in the sense that you see, apart from the formal top to bottom communication, that means from you to your headmaster or headmistress or principal, whatever you called, and from him to her to down you, there's a protocol. But you see, apart from that, in Bengal, what we call as PNPC, that would mean, these small chit chats This is grapevine, outside this protocol, uh, talking behind the back, small talks. These are actually called, grapevine communication. So that's a very interesting idea. But you see, what we are going to do today is that we are not going to do this grapevine communication, which I hope that probably you have covered. So we are not going to do that, nor are we going to do the formal English which you use at your workplace, which has been covered in communication barriers, maybe. But we are going to, again, to make it interesting, to pertaining to your subject. So if this is clear, and if this is clear that we will be pertaining to English EAP, ESP, EAP, EST, EB and EMP, you see, none of you I saw, are from the medical schools, none of you, if at all from law, I must have missed. But I'll be catering somewhat to these, right? So we move on. Okay, so what do we do exactly? So you see, English for specific purposes, you see, by now, it has been, quite a very active and a very fiercely discipline, right? And it has now has a very considerable influence in the general global scenario, okay, global scenario, and it has taken an upper hand when we are actually training or teaching English to speakers of other languages. So you and me, all of us are speakers definitely of other languages. Our native tongue is something different, okay? But we basically, we have certain needs, and therefore, according to the needs analysis, ESP has now become the rage of the day. So what do we need to actually do with our English? Apart from this good noon, good morning, basic communication, or the general relationships, okay? What skills do we need to master and how well? That would mean, suppose as a science teacher, you actually do not need a kind of a language which goes on to amplify and elaborate loosely things, like we do probably in literature, okay? Or say any kind of a language, like in Hindi, there are Hindi teachers over here. So we have this liberty to loosely go into a very informal kind of an application. You probably don't, because you are dwelling on, as subject teachers, who dwell more on accuracy, especially science, technology, business management, right? So you look into, you see brevity, you look into clarity. We'll come into that. What genres do you need to master, okay, for comprehension or production purposes? That would mean what kind of sentences, what kind of syntax and structures, okay? So you do not probably need more of, complex kind of sentences. You would rather prefer simple, direct sentences for the sake of your languages, and that is what you need to master. By now, probably you must have learned, and you must have known that when we think of, you see, language or linguistic skills, then we actually need to understand that language would mean the 4 skills. Anybody, my esteemed colleagues, anybody, if you remember, or you've been told the 4 skills, you must have been told about the 4 skills that you need to know in English.
LSRW skills, ma'am.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you. I expected this much, definitely. So LSRW skills, that is listening, reading, okay? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing, right? So you see, how can you therefore approach this listening, speaking, reading, writing through your subjects? At any moment of time, please, if it's becoming very boring, kindly let me know, right? What is very important, you see, in ESP is that it begins with the learner and the situation. That would mean you as a learner, or your learner as a learner. What in your computer science class, or your EVS class, or your geography class, what exactly do you need? That would mean we understand much more with diagrams. So you see, you will probably need to know more about processing. A language which helps you to probably describe and discuss processing one part, one step to another, the next step to the next, okay, following a kind of a diagram with precise ideas. So your need is that rather than you see what are adjectives, what are nouns, okay. General English begins with language. That would mean, you see, when we talk of communicative English, we basically talk about, how do you go about in the society, augmenting or bettering your relationship. How can you become a better communicator? Now, that is different again. All of you probably by this time we must have learned. And also, you see, therefore, this is a shift, because you see, this is a shift from teaching and learning language as a carrier of literature and culture. So you see, many of us, we have this fancy, that we will need to pronounce the words accurately in a native manner in English. Although probably the science teacher, the law teachers, they exactly don't probably think of that. But somewhere in your mind it goes. But you see, in ESP, we are saying, no, all this is rubbish. Okay? You got to have a practical command of the language. So acceptable. All of you must have heard about by now. Again, I expect that, or I assume that you know about something which we call as GIE also. GIE. So, where there's a chat box, so where I write for you. So, GIS. I see thumbs up. So, yes. So, okay. So GIE, yes. So GIE, General Indian English. So in that, you see, we all know that in the General Indian English, we do not basically need to be so very accurate, just acceptability. Okay. So what exactly, therefore, ESP is hinting at? So by now we know that ESP is basically hinting at using a practical language and an English in this case, and the learner's needs. So we will cater to the learner's needs. Okay. This somebody who is an expert, Stevens. Okay. 1977. Although this is very relevant. Okay. So we'll look into, or I will be gearing my talk with you. I'm still in the concept level. Those skills. So what kind of skills do you need? Say vocabulary. Say you will need something, suppose, as photosynthesis. You will need something as algorithm. You will need something as probably, say, market economy. Okay. So these are the kind of vocabulary which you will be needing. What will I do, if I tell you about the, about the mood and the tone? What will you do with all that? That's not your vocabulary. Grammar patterns, like say somebody, ESP is also related to, say, specific subjects, like say journalism and mass communication. They need a lot of, reported speech. So syntactically, reporters are required to report. Or say advocates in the law courts. So you see, they will be required to talk in, present tense as well as past tense, the precedents, okay? The earlier laws and the earlier kind of, you can say the kind of cases which had happened earlier, okay? Linguistic functions. What do you need to do? Like say, for sciences, usually you talk in passive voice. So in passive voice, so that, there is no emotion, there is no subjectivity involved. So the linguistic function is to just to state in passive voice is something which is very objective, right? So immediate purposes. So I include in ESP, we also include only topics, themes, and discourse context. Discourse context would be, most of you probably know the reason or the situation why we are using. Okay, like so suppose we are talking about the context of fossils. This has also become a part of history, geography, science. So the context in which fossils can be talked about, right? So the immediate language needs of while talking about a class on fossils. Okay, and as you understand, learners' immediate purpose. So if you are basically preparing them for the exams, then probably you will prepare them in a different manner, right? Now you see, as we till here, I hope I am not going too much in a hurry, and I hope I am not confusing you. Is it all okay with you? Anybody?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
It's okay.
ma'am.
Okay. So if we can move on, then you see, uh, again, this is something which, as very esteemed colleagues, I am just facilitating or reinforcing what you have already known all these days. So there's a difference between this general and the technical communication. I keep in mind there are people in this course who are from languages like me, but I am catering a bit more into technical, right? So if you see, the left would give you the characteristic of general English, and the right would give you the characteristic of technical communication. When we say technical, we say ESP, EAP, English for academic purposes, and also English for EST, science and technology, which can include business, law, and whatever. So for technical general, and for, again, you see, for technical communication, technical, typical technical, very specific content. Again, general vocabulary, specific vocabulary, like say litmus, chemistry, okay? Like say test tube, very specialized vocabulary. For general, there might be formal, but may not be formal elements. Okay, just good introduction, the weather, and then how are you and how I am. Okay, very formal elements, no lengthy introduction. For general communication, in case of meetings, agenda, we can be formal, but most of the time we can be also informal, even in teaching in class. Say for a Hindi teacher, agar aap poem padha rahe hain, my Hindi is not very good, I'm very afraid to talk to you because I'm a typical Bengali. लेकिन अगर आप हिंदी पढ़ा रहे हैं, उर्दू में पढ़ा रहे हैं, तो आप अपने ख्याल से ही कहते हैं, बोलते रहते हैं, मैं भी जैसे from English. But you see, in case of technical, it's not so. Okay? We can be factual and non-factual. You have to be always factual, always accurate. Okay? We can be objective and subjective. You have to be always objective. Okay? We can meander from here to there, from the fields to the plains, from philosophy, anything. You have to be very logically organized, like, the method papers, the research, the methodology, the theoretical paradigm, the kind of field work. So everything must be very structured, okay? For us, okay, language, literature, okay, to some extent social sciences, but not for geography, not for history. They are more empirical, very specific. We don't have, for the humanities and languages, we usually don't have very specific exposition. You have very specific. The introduction is very specific. No specific audience for ESP. Okay. For ESP, there's always a specific audience. Okay. And you have a specific audience. In this case, you have your children to teach. You have your students to teach. For languages, although I would say that, nowadays in ELT, okay, or in linguistics, we have a lot of graphics. It's very empirical, but generally may not. I think I can move on. This is something which you understand, right? Now you see, I again, at the with the caveat that I am not trying to bore you to death. See, this is a sample passage, and my courtesy to Rizvi, who is the author of this very splendid book of technical English. So this is a passage, you see, which I have highlighted from you, and this is from, say, physics, roughly. So, and the passage is about sound sources. And if you can take just a minute, to see, as to read the passage. And in that passage, you see that we see that this passage is describing something. But as you see, we basically see that it's a very formal. So the words are very formal as expected. You as teachers, very objective, very impersonal, and passive constructions, as I was saying. Okay. So you see, when you are using English as teachers, you will be requiring these, formal words, your specific vocabulary, very objective, very personal, and passive constructions, right? So reported speech. Okay, and you see, this passage contains very technical terms like say deafness, like say reflection or reduction in lifespan. So these are very specific terms with specific meanings. No double meanings, no kind of playing with words. Very simple, very direct, very factual, and very precise, right? So as teachers, also you will need this kind of a language in writing, as well as when you speak also, you will not use a kind of an English which will create ambiguity, right? So no ambiguity in your subjects, okay? Unless you are teaching languages like me, okay? Also, you see a rhetorical technique of description. By rhetoric, you see, we do not mean ornaments in the case of languages or literature. Here, rhetoric would mean a kind of an argument, okay? An argument. So you will need an argument, okay, to develop with your language, right? Which is logical, okay, and which has a lot of organization. So unlike general English, there's no use, you see, if you cannot develop a kind of an English which you write and speak, which is logically organized. So this is the kind of specific English which you will need, right? To move on further, you see, then what are therefore the essentials of this kind of English? This sample, this sample which I was showing you of a sample passage from physics, say, okay? There has to be absolute accuracy. So you see, I know, and I am very respectful that you definitely, you see, you will, you are teachers who know your subject well. So accuracy for you is the utmost importance, and accuracy not only in your subject, but also you see accuracy in grammar. Now here, please, let me discuss something with you in the sense that you see, most of you probably till now at this point of time, you feel that what's the point of being bothered about English? We are after all teachers who don't teach English. But you see, in as a byproduct, if I guess that all of your instruction medium is English, so as a byproduct, you see, English goes to your learners. So if you are actually not paying any attention to the English, and writing or talking with grammatical errors, you see, absolute horrible errors, not, there's something called acceptable. You don't have to be, don't have to have a native like English, native competence, not that. You see, at least some kind of acceptable English. Good tone, good pronunciation, right? Okay. So, Aisha, you have raised a hand. Would you like to say something? Aisha ma'am? Aisha ma'am, would you like to say something? Or is it a mistake? Do I carry on, Aisha ma'am? Okay. Okay, then I think that was a mistake. So, precision. Okay. Again, I repeat, precision would mean simple, familiar words. There's no need of complicated words. Use of exact words and phrases. Like say, you cannot be a Shashi Tharoor in the classroom. No point. You are teaching botany, probably. So no Shashi Tharoorian English, right? So avoiding excessive jargon. Again, you see, you teach young children probably. Many of them probably come from vernacular mediums, okay? So if you probably tell them rule of the thumb, they may not know, although rule of the thumb is a very common idiom. But for ESP, you don't actually use these kind of idioms. For general English, we use, but your children won't understand. So avoid also hackneyed, cliched phrases. Be short. Okay. Clarity. Absolutely. No layered meaning. And don't repeat. I am repeating because you see, by default, I'm a language literature teacher. You, because of your paucity time, I understand, You have no scope of repeating things. Okay. So we'll just move on. And this is a small, sort of an exercise. Again, you see, I pick up something from chemistry. And this is basically, look at the register. When we talk about the register in a language, we talk about a particular kind of language which is associated with a particular subject. So again, ESP, English for specific purposes. Now you see in this passage, couple of words are underlined, and you see this is a kind of somewhat, again with due respect to Shashi Tharoor. I like him immensely, fan of him. But you see, these are the words which are used, and if you can see in this particular passage, you see these words have been replaced. Can someone please? We have an interactive session. We can come back to this probably, and if we can see exactly, Gosik sir, Iqbal sir has raised a hand, sir. Would you like to say something? Would you like to do this passage for us?
Excuse me,
Iqbal
ma'am.
sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask, ma'am,
Yes,
what's the
yes.
difference between jargon
Oh,
and register?
I am normal.
Ma'am, my name is Ghaussia Iqbal.
Okay, that's a good question. Jargon, yes. Register, basically, that's a good question. So, register is basically, you see, relevant language.
Ma'am,
to a
jargon and
particular
register, what's the difference between jargon and register?
Ma'am, am I audible, ma'am? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Your voice is slightly broken, ma'am. Your voice is slightly broken. Yes, please repeat, ma'am. Repeat.
Ma'am, I am asking what's the difference between jargon and register?
Yes, I was answering you, ma'am. I was answering.
Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, I'm Sadia Khalil from RMPS. Ma'am, jargon is a degree of formality.
Okay. In a way, right, ma'am. But it could also be, ma'am,
And
when you
jargons are the
repeat
words
certain,
technically used by some
phrases.
people.
Yes, but it is more than that. Let me slightly elaborate, ma'am, since the question is coming. In the sense that you see, jargon becomes something, let's say, I say, suppose an idiom, which is probably birds of the same feather flock together, suppose. And this later on,
Sadia ma'am,
passes
please
on
mute your mic.
Yes, all of you, please, esteemed participants, kindly mute. All of you, please mute. Okay. Now you see, jargon would be related to specific kind of, like say, if I would give you, say, the underworld. Okay. Say if I use something from vernacular. Okay. Say an underworld where you see it becomes a jargon, and also sometimes it is called card. Like say supari. You must be familiar with this kind of a word, where in the underworld, tipping off somebody. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
That becomes a kind of a jargon, see? And which is repeatedly, when it used, it becomes a very hackneyed jargon. But you see, register is something which is, and jargon also means a relationship of jargon to hackneyed speeches. When you use it too much, it becomes heavy on the language. It does not give an elan to the language, or it does not actually improve the style of the language, right? It becomes a kind of a burden to the language. That becomes a jargon. Too much of it, right? Okay. Now you see, when you go to the register, it is something which is very formal. It adds actually to the quality of your language. Like say, if we are talking about the register of medicine, so I will be talking about stethoscope, I will be talking about pathology, I will be talking about clinical diagnosis. Okay. Without these words, of course, if you try to talk to a doctor, you cannot, nor can the doctor talk to you prescription. And these are essential. This will not load the language. Rather, in case of jargon, the jargon can actually jeopardize the language, load the language by becoming too very hackneyed. Is it understood? Understood. So they are not quality terms. Okay. Can we move on then? Have I been able to roughly give an idea to you? Okay.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
think we
Thank
move
you.
on. We'll come back. Okay. We'll come back. Ma'am, thank you to you also. Okay, because you actually took up this. Thanks. Thank you so much. Right. So we'll come back to this. You see, this passage, and we can do it afterwards as to how you see. In this passage also, before I move on, since we talked about jargon, you see, this trenchantly, ignite, these are heavy words. This can also be sometimes, if you use too much and without making any sense to your children, the students you teach, these can also become jargons. Whereas you see these simple words in the next passage, you see vigorously instead of trenchantly, these can become actually, if not register, quality words. These are not exactly register, but quality words, right? So we'll come back to this. Okay. We go on and okay. So this is slightly technical. You see, I began talking to you, not exactly lecture. I won't say this is a lecture. Talking to you by saying that ESP is something which is basically targeted to for adult learners. Okay, limited duration, but as I am actually trying to develop your and myself and through you, your learners, it can also be customized for your students too. So with that kind of an adjustment, we move on, right? And as I was telling you, we can consider this ESP, EVP, as we say, you see, vocational English, language skills needed in a job, which we are doing right now. Apart from, which is different again from this pre-vocational English, you are all in-service teachers. So we can also think of pre-vocational English or a kind of an English which has been adjusted down to the level of even your learners. Okay. I have quoted, you needn't worry about this, who are Ellis and Johnson. But you see, people like you, in-service teachers, you will probably, some of you at least, are probably bothered about fluency, okay, getting the message across. Some of you might be bothered, even, while in classroom setup, might be. Not all of you again, okay? So, yes, Semi, thank you. Also, formality in language use. True, register refers to formality in language use, okay? So, with that, again, I go back to what we are doing. So definitely, you see, when we talk of fluency, would anybody like to contribute as to, because I see that a lot of you know a lot of things. Okay. So what is exactly fluency? Would anybody like to write or somebody unmute? One person, please. What is fluency? I now, in all these days, is it fluency only speaking fast? Is it? Of fluency? Okay. So fluency basically would mean actually going in a particular tempo, with optimal pauses, with a kind of a voice modulation, okay, with a kind of a speed which is acceptable, right? So that's actually fluency. Fluency is not being able to talk very fast. Talking very fast or slow actually depends on individual idiosyncrasies. Okay, some people talk fast, some people talk slow. But fluency is to be able to hold on to a kind of a tempo which helps your learners to basically understand you. If you talk very fast in your class, your children won't be able to understand it. And that fluency will also help you to get across the message. Also, fluency talks about somewhat the pitch and the volume, how loud you are. If you are you see, a teacher who doesn't have a volume in your voice. Yes, ability to speak clearly. Yes, that's why the volume. Okay. And each word would also be, it should have a clarity. So therefore, you see, if you are basically gobbling, then that can interfere with your fluency. But fluency generally talks about the speed or the tempo, as we say, right? So you see, here the context is where I have, the context which I have used is, you see, from companies, from institutes, fluency, you see, if you are talking to your other colleagues in a meeting or in this training also, to get your message across, you need to, whether within your subject or outside your subject, you need to basically talk with clarity, talk with a kind of an acceptable speech, right? So that's something which is important. And you see, again, I'm coming back to ESP, and while we are talking about ESP, the approaches, and again, you are not English teachers. I'm mindful of that. You are here training yourself, and through training yourself, you're trying to train your learners. I am again reminding you and reminding myself. And as a byproduct, English comes in. So we are also therefore talking about register analysis over here. So again, we have been talking about register. Okay, we have been talking about register, and I see that you know what is register. So when we are teaching learning, we will be considering the register, which is the special language, the idea of special language. And you see the language which is related to a particular subject. I have given some. It can be beyond that. Okay, and the materials and the resources which are chosen. Okay, while I am teaching you, or you are basically as a byproduct giving English as a gift through teaching botany, through teaching nursing, through teaching management to your students. Okay, materials or resources which should be able to reflect your subject as well as the byproduct of English which it gives rise to. Okay, it should definitely recognize the kind of grammar and lexis which that particular register entails. Okay, and you see, also, you see, there are important people, those who work on this register analysis. You see, this Dudley, Evans, and St. John, you see, they basically measure the degree of formality also. So, registers in these particular languages also are very formal, okay? The formal kinds of lexical items, grammatical items, and you see the semantic items of the larger chunks of language. They are very formal. So according to Dudley, and it's also managing information, right? What else do we see? You see, we also look into, you see, the discourse analysis. So discourse would mean, you see, how we are looking into a chunk of language. I am, just a minute, please. Yes. How we are looking into a chunk of language, and we are basically giving meaning to it. So that is basically discourse. So when you are actually explaining a part of a language, like say we had that passage on sound. As a teacher, you don't only read the passage, and your job is not only to point out the words and leave it. You are also interpreting it. The moment you are interpreting and explaining a particular passage in a class, you are also therefore going into discourse analysis, which is also, at the level of hermeneutics. We call it, the technical term is hermeneutics. That would mean the art of interpretation, right? So, hermeneutics, I'm just writing in case some of you are interested in some terms. So, the art of interpretation. So, that is basically discourse analysis, right? Now, with discourse analysis, you see, we are also bothered about, so how do you explain in discourse analysis? And along with that, we are bothered about also target situation analysis. That would mean, we were talking about needs analysis. So suppose, say, I give you a small example that you see, your students probably might be coming, some of your students might be coming from rural background. Some of your students might be coming from urban background. So the situation could be different. And the kind of vocabulary, the kind of syntax, or whether you need to chip in a little bit of vernacular, that will all depend on the target situation. And you will have to kind of adjust your teaching and your discourse and your register depending on the target situation, and therefore also the skills and strategies, okay, the language also, okay. What kind of skills, what kind of strategies, what kind of approaches will you need, okay? Whether you will use authentic language, whether you will use simplified language, simplified materials, abbreviated things, that will depend on your situation, the strategies which you will be using. This is also a part of your training. But definitely, ESP also talks about learning-centered approach. What is this learning-centered approach? You see, language learning instead of language use. That would mean while you are teaching, you are also learning the language. As a byproduct, I repeat and I repeat, as a byproduct, you are also learning one language which you are targeting for yourself and your children, that is English. Okay? As we move on, therefore, I will now move on to, in the last, the lap of my lecture, penultimate probably, if not the last, you see. We'll move on to, therefore, if you see, we have looked into the concept of ESP, and you see the approaches, some of the things we need to remember while we think of ESP. Then you see what are the kind of materials, or the kind of through your materials, what could you do? Okay, so this is one of the impressions which I share with you. So for you, it's figuratively cut up. That means component pieces. These are the important, phrases. That means for ESP, it's not exactly a long chunk which is important. The smaller chunks which are important, specifically engineered to suit your students. Okay. So in case you are bothered about yourself as to if you are giving your learners and yourself, okay, a kind of a material through your subject for reading, and you are also developing reading skills, your and your learners, what can you do? Somebody must have told you about, some esteemed trainers must have told you about skimming and scanning. Okay. Skimming, basically looking for small information while reading. Scanning would be intense information, details while reading. In ESP, you have to also relate to graphs in the text. Okay? You might have also to predict the sequence and the structure of a text. I'll show you. And understand also elliptical writing. Sometimes you see texts also suggest rather than tell everything to you. So there your discourse analysis would be useful. Okay? Colleagues, can you see this particular slide which I'm showing you? Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we can
Yes,
see.
ma'am.
Okay. So it's a typical lesson plan, and this is by a pre-service teacher, right? Pre-service teacher. I have borrowed this courtesy to the teacher, and the teacher's name is there. So this is how you see a water cycle is being used, and I've directly taken so slightly blurred. And how you see from this particular slide, what I'll try to do is I'll try to make this full slide, and I'll ask you whether you can see this. If I make it a full, can you now see, or it's gone? I have made it full screen. Can you see it, or it's gone?
Yes, it's there. It's there.
You can see. Okay, it's there. So if it's there, then you see, can you read it, this water cycle? There's a diagram and the passage. You see, we are not doing an exercise, but just to, those who teach environmental science or life science or geography, this is something which is, you use staple. It's a kind of a staple thing. And you see, I again, escape full screen. I have come back and I go again to the kind of, you see, the worksheet which has been used by the teacher, which is a development of not only the subject which you see over here. You see, related to that particular slide, this is actually developing reading skills also. You probably might be thinking that this is all we are also testing and evaluating, isn't it? That what starts the water cycle, clouds form, in which stage of the water cycle, the comprehension questions, what are the 4 main stages of the water cycle, what is evaporation? You see, suppose if you are basically the section B2 questions, if you are probably telling them to your young learners, telling them to answer you, speak out instead of writing. If they are writing, you're actually, and if they are writing in English, then you are actually developing their writing skill too, while you are developing their knowledge in EVS or life science or geography, in whichever you are using this. Similarly, you see when they are taking off the correct answer, they are also developing the reading skill of English. See, section C, if you are forming these kind of questions, I am aware your board will fix for you the kind of questions that you use. But I am sure at the school level, these kind of questions are permitted, if not at the college and university level. So section C, while you are testing your own subject, you are also testing the vocabulary, developing the vocabulary. When water turns into gas due to heat, it's a particular very, very technical word. Clouds are formed during the process of very, very technical word, evaporation, right? Now you see, if you are a very ambitious teacher, this right hand side, you can also develop a kind of, tell them to develop a kind of a story also, which is the domain of English teacher, a rainy day, where you are actually developing English, but that's not your domain. I just showed you in case somebody is interested. Now, therefore, you are yourself going into it through your own material, and you are gifting yourself and your learners a kind of an English which probably is going into fluency and going into technical, precise kind of an English, right? Now, if we go into, say, it's 12:53, so I'll probably target, 1:10 at the most to finish and go into interaction with you. You see, in ESP materials, you see the materials for writing. When we are targeting materials for writing, then you see we are also targeting that students slowly. And this is at the level of, say, class 9, 10, for slightly, senior learners. Through again science, through again management, we are trying to develop in them a report, taking notes, summarizing a text, write descriptions of processes and systems, write letters and mails too. Okay, I will try to again show a kind of a sample. Now, before that, you see, I will also read for you something. There is this Kenneth and Bolito, who are basically, experts. Okay, they talk about, you see, this idea of coherence in writing. You must have probably told about how it's important to be coherent in your writing. That would mean have logic, have cause and effect. Even if you are technical teachers, even if you are teaching science, technology, law, business, whatever it be, coherence in writing is very important. Okay? And teaching also. Okay? So therefore, you see, that is something which can be developed through these. Okay? So again, I show you a kind of a sample. And this is, the courtesy to a pre-learner, pre-teaching, pre-service teacher. So where you see this slide has been taken with a diagram, and you see what can we do? Okay, as science teachers, you can basically, this is sewage treatment plant, and as usual in your subjects, there's a diagram. And there's a kind of an introductory passage given. If you are basically making them write kindly, you see, and if you are writing, kindly see that you take care of also the coherence or the logic or the syntax, the grammar and the vocabulary. While you are basically through these cues, you are yourself writing or teaching writing in class through your own subject. You are also developing your subject. Okay, so you see raw sewage, from there, equalization, primary setting, all these are there, which we used to do right at the school level as processing. We used to call that as processing, long chunks of writing, where you see coherence is basically the most important focus. Okay. We go on, you see. Are you still logged on? I hope I am not basically troubling you too much. Am I making some sense at least? Some
Yes, ma'am,
sense?
we are
Very
listening.
sensible it is, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So if it's absolutely out, please let me know. Okay, I'm basically experimenting, and I will take your opinions also, because this is the last, lecture. So I will also take your opinions. That's very important. Okay. Now you see here, you see materials for listening. Probably most of us, we don't even pay. We neglect, we neglect listening. Although contemporary trainings in your, as you in a school system also, you have been told that you see develop the listening skills, audio, video. What we call nowadays is multimodality. Okay, AI introduces the concept of multimodality. So we are basically into bringing in, while we are developing these listening skills, as to those kind of materials. So do we really do that? Is there any scope for doing that, right? If we have time, yes. Okay, keeping in mind that there are constraints of the syllabus, constraints of exam, constraints of infrastructure. Can we be with our own laptop? Can we actually focus on the wall, and can we do these? Okay. So here you see ESP materials. These are for adult learners. Lectures. Lectures would mean your classroom teaching. Instruction could mean your classroom teaching. Seminars, meeting, discussions, all these can be made to listen. And what can the children be made to listen, or what can we listen to? Keywords, main ideas. You can introduce, before you play something. Speaker's attitude and switches of register. Again, register by now, speaker's attitude, the tone, the mood, the kind of approach towards you. Okay, whether it's respectful, disrespectful, whether it's a kind of a didactic attitude, whether it's a participatory attitude. Nowadays, we talk of interactive learning. Therefore, you see, we ask the learners. The learners come with a baggage, okay, of their own understanding. Just like you as esteemed participants, you have come with your own training. Who am I to train you? So I will also be learning from you. So given that, you see, what can we do? I will try my best. Dear colleagues, give me at least, the liberty to try to make you listen to this if I can. Okay. So if I cannot, you see, or if I feel, I will give up. But am I still audible, participants? Will you please tell me if I'm audible?
Audible.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes,
The
yes,
moment
ma'am, you are audible.
please tell me. Okay, the moment I'm inaudible, because I'm trying something different. Okay, so I'm trying to make you listen to something. Okay, so this is, you see, for preschoolers. Okay, primary, school children. So I don't know at which level. What I'm playing. Can you see? Uh, can you-
And
can you hear this?
chlorophyll, which is a green substance that all plants have and is fundamental for performing photosynthesis, since it could not happen without it. By the way, chlorophyll is what gives all plants their green colour. But how does photosynthesis take place? Look at this plant! As you can see, its roots are anchored to the ground. And through them, the plant absorbs water and minerals in the soil. Water with minerals are transported up the stem, reaching the leaves. The leaves are full of tiny pores called stomata, which absorb carbon dioxide that the air in the surrounding contains. All this containing water.
Okay, so that's it for you. And again, you see, I'll go back to my original presentation. I hope you could see and listen to that. Could you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So, you see, what I'm trying to do is yes. Now, again, I'm back to, what I was doing. And I am trying to show you over here as to what can you do with this. So, you see, can you now see the slide, the original slide? Can you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you see, what we can do with this particular video and audio, I say, is not only do your own subject, okay, but you can also, as a byproduct, practice pronouncing the following words, like say, photosynthesis, okay. So I am not actually going to pronounce in the way the native tongue, which you see the narrator was doing, but at least you can make them pronounce photosynthesis, okay. Children might not be knowing. Chlorophyll. They might say chlorophyll. Stomata. They might say stomata. Okay. Contaminated. They might say something else. So pronunciation of words could also be a kind of a byproduct. Okay, while and yourself also learning and taking care that you are not actually giving them something which is incorrect, right? Similarly, you see, you can tell them to use them in your own sentences while you actually make them do. Okay.
What is this?
Okay. Yes, yes. Yes, someone please. Yes. You wanted to contribute? Kindly, please. Somebody wants to contribute? Okay, okay, we'll come back. We'll just about, okay, towards the last part, okay? So just again, the purpose of, listening is something which is very focused. Listening is something, so you can basically tell them that today I teach photosynthesis in a different manner through this video for very young learners. And this is simplified material, okay? And you can develop this, the byproduct. And if you are very enthusiastic, then you can actually take up this, write a notice as a CR about observing World Tree Plantation Day. So while they know why your green plant's important, they kind of, go into writing. And you can also, in collaboration with your English teacher, you can actually get these corrected. So they are also developing English while they're learning biology or life science or EVS or whatever, okay? I have targeted 10 past 1. So if I can, I will also show you the other video a little bit, which is from computer science. Nowadays, we are into AI. So basically, if we can just a minute, please. And if I'm wasting too much time, I'm not going to, try too much. Just a minute, please. If I can. Are you able to see the screen and hear? Are you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
This is That's it. I'll stop over here. Okay. So we'll again go back to what we were doing. Okay. So is the screen now visible again? Is the
Yes,
screen
ma'am.
visible
Yes,
to you?
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if the screen is visible now, you see on the basis of what we had seen about algorithms. Okay. Can we basically, you see, as a byproduct, while you are all computer teachers, can you yourself, encourage this? And you see, you must have observed that while the video and the audio was basically preparing them for the basics of algorithm, it was also featuring on how sequencing is important in everyday life. Like the last slide was, if you remember, on brushing the teeth, how it goes in steps. So you see, if you try to develop the language as a kind of last question, the importance of pattern and order in everyday life, right? So you see, when you give these kind of videos and audios as multimodality, what we call, okay, and teachers over here know much more than me, then you are training the ear too, just like you are training yourself too, as to how to be mindful while teaching and listening also while making questions and creating tasks. So the tasks can be a little bit of original ones also, right? I think I will quickly move on to the last part, and we move on to the next, another, 2 minutes, where we are talking about, vocabulary building also, and the same kind of lessons, okay? And you see, in vocabulary building, what can we do? When we are doing our own lessons, we can also develop these kind of prefixes, suffixes, identification of word classes. The English teacher does. But you are also developing in a way synonymy, selection from alternatives, match the following, building up sets and collocations. How you see, I will show you again as a kind of a sample, right? You see, in this sample, if you can see the screen, you see, this is again, fossil, which is a part of history, life science, anything. The register would be related to those kind of subjects. And see, when you are setting questions like these, and you see fossil, extinct, paleontology, sediment, and you are trying to get your learners, match them with column B, you are actually not only teaching them the subject, but also vocabulary building. And if you reinforce, you build your vocabulary and also the learner's vocabulary. Finally, you see grammar teaching. And I will just hurry a bit, you see, because my time is running out. See, in grammar teaching, the appropriate factor and the efficiency factor. And as you see, efficiency might be measured in economy, ease, and efficacy. How important is the grammar? What kind of grammar do you need? Now, I have seen science students, especially, and other subject teachers, especially, and also learners, they are very weak in subject-verb agreement. Like say, he goes, they go. Okay, so it can become, he go, and they goes, something like this. Okay, So, what kind of grammar is more important as a byproduct, that can be integrated too. So, again, this last slide, and I will omit the others and wrap up the lecture. And again, this I will try to make it a full slide, which I thought might be interesting for you, because this is from UP. It's a Times of India news, where you see we are into this AI zone nowadays. And you see this AI time, where you see there was just 1 month ago, this AI ma'am, and this teacher Mohanlal Suman sir, who has innovated the AI ma'am, and how you see this is a reporting. So I call this a register of journalism. And journalism and mass comm teachers, you see, you will be interested in this as to how you see grammar and syntax is very important for writing this kind of register in journalism and mass comm. Why? Because you see, you need to write in reported speech. You need to write in past tense, sometimes in past continuous tense, right? So I am, you can probably yourself look up this. We don't have probably so much of time to read through the entire thing. But what we can do is, we can basically look into how you see when you are actually teaching your learners. I saw that there are certain journalism, mass comm teachers in this training too. So you are actually also augmenting your and the learners the simple past, simple continuous. Like say, there can be, say, there are sentences in this passage which I showed you. Actually, the AI teacher has also helped children overcome shyness. There was a sentence over here. This is actually simple past. Okay, so you can actually therefore go into teaching as again indirectly simple past and past continuous for journalism teachers. Indirect speech. Like Pavitra of class 7, he quotes, say, school is such a fun place now. So it's a direct speech. So when you are teaching them to report something, then you are also teaching them indirect speech, appropriate forms of verbs. Like say, none of the school's 7 human teachers has failed to notice the difference in their AI colleague. So why should it be has failed, and why not only failed, or why not is failing? Okay, so actually you are teaching a lot of grammar, and if you are ambitious, you can go into teaching integrated skills. Okay, so this is a sample lesson, not going into it. Sample grammar focus, not going into it, because I would like to 15 minutes at least talk to you. So what you can basically is think about it. I know there's a lot of restriction because of your boards, as I understand, and you also understand the examination system, everything. But if you can make room for your learning and their learning of communication skills, adequacy, motivate them, motivate yourself, keep a sequence, keep diversity, innovate, please, be original, okay? And use acceptability, something which is culturally very, very appropriate and acceptable, right? So that's it. You see, that's it. That's it. These are the last slides. Make a subjective analysis, objective analysis, match the material, define the criteria, make a needs analysis. And finally, you see, ultimately, if you can feel that, you can bring in some kind of a fresh whiff of air. That's it. I am done with. Yes, that's it. So now it's open. If you can, yes, whatever you want to. Please, Ambreen.
Ma'am, Assalamu alaikum and very
Yes,
good
ma'am.
afternoon.
Yes.
Yes, I am Breen Rahman from AMU City Girls High School, ma'am. And I am very thankful for this very informative session, ma'am. I don't have any question. I just wanna share experience with you. Actually, I am engaging primary sections in my school, ma'am. as you told us. Okay, and the to you gave some examples, and not only ESPN for English, you told us it is very helpful for any other subjects just like EVS. So my subject is EVS, ma'am. That's why I am telling you. Actually, in we have a separate worksheet, ma'am, have been made for each and every classes from the class third to fifth, so that the children can understand the lessons well, and by distributing their knowledge in smaller parts, and they can understand the lessons more well with the help of some projects, with the help of activities. And also in our school, ma'am, we have a smart class section, a smart board. So you cannot imagine, ma'am, कि they enjoyed their study, they enjoyed their subject a lot, and they are very desperate to learn with these type of projects. So I am very thankful to tell you all your objects and all your information with us. And definitely, ma'am, we will apply more and more your teaching skills, your learning skills in our upcoming session, in our upcoming classes. So I am so thankful to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Grateful to you. If
Good
there's been
afternoon,
of
ma'am.
some use also. Yes, good
Yes, good
afternoon.
afternoon, ma'am.
Good
Thank you
afternoon,
so
ma'am.
much for
Yes.
your wonderful session. It was really very interesting and informative. Ma'am, I want to know how can teachers assess the students' progress in ESP?
Ma'am, excuse me, you are not audible, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
Sorry. Yes. I forgot, muted myself. So, as I've been continuously saying, ESP basically is not something where you see the development of English communication as separate from your subject. It is basically integrated. So, you see, when you are evaluating, like I was showing you the worksheets, right? So,
Yes,
the worksheets had match the following, the worksheets had one-line answers, the worksheets had, the correct answer, choosing the correct answer.
yes,
Now,
ma'am.
see, through all that, basically, you are actually, those worksheets are the evaluative part, the part of evaluation, right? And when you see, when you are evaluating, you are also checking the progress. So you see, you can have monthly tests. These worksheets are small ones. It will take hardly 10 minutes. So weekly, monthly, if you basically arrange questions which are developing, say, when it's match the following, it's actually vocabulary building. When it's choosing the right answer, then it's actually reading, testing the reading skill. When
Right,
it's showing
ma'am, right.
video and answering questions on the basis of that, then it's developing reading skills. When you are making them write one-line answer, it's actually developing writing skill. So therefore, you see, you are not only checking their time-to-time progress. If they fail to answer, that would mean
Yes,
they
ma'am.
are weaker learners. They will need remedial teaching. Those who are quickly answering, able to respond in 10 minutes, 15 minutes with proper instructions. Your worksheets must contain proper instruction. They are progressing, not
Yes,
only
ma'am.
progressing in your subject, but also progressing in communication skills. And
Yes,
please
yes,
make
ma'am.
them speak. Just like, in
Yes,
these trainings, we encourage you to speak. Make them speak. Right?
yes, ma'am.
I
Yes,
think
ma'am. Thank
yes. Okay.
you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Please, other questions, if you're most welcome. We still have time. Anybody else? I was actually in a hurry because I want you to speak. Contribution, please, to this. How can we, develop this? Probably. Okay, then.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Farhat Parveen from AMUABK High School Girls. Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your expertise. Ma'am, I teach English and history in my class, class 9 and 10. So, what do I feel that while teaching English and while teaching history, in both the conditions, your communication skills are very important. Though it is different that when we teach in English class, we have to be rather very much perfect in our delivering. And sometimes it seems to me that when while teaching history, we can use bilingual or we can go in a very easy way. But while teaching terms, as you said when you were talking about science and technology, टर्म्स को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए हमारा प्रोनाउंसिएशन बहुत सही होना चाहिए while delivering the terms. Otherwise अगर हम नॉर्मल चीज एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं तो we can go with an easy language. But what I feel is that कि इंग्लिश में हमें थोड़ा सा पर्टिकुलर होना पड़ता है.
You're right, absolutely. Like say in English, we can't afford to go wrong. Like say if I'm
Yes,
an
ma'am.
English teacher, I can't afford to mispronounce.
Exactly,
Sometimes we
ma'am.
do, like say in the sense, you see, there is something which we call as native pronunciation. Like say if you saw that in that photosynthesis video, the kind of photosynthesis that was being pronounced over there, we barely do that. But in English, at least we'll have to use something acceptable. But again, with a caveat, you see, a warning, I also say that, you see, for other than English subjects, also, you see, pronouncing that word is most accurately and perfectly is most important. Technical terms. Like, say, you know, the term, suppose, say something like, say, Tungstan. That's the name of a metal. Tungsten or tungsten. What do you say that? Suppose, you know, if you are teaching, it's related to chemistry. If you are teaching the children, if any chemistry teacher over here, any chemistry teacher, what would that be exactly if you can tell us? Now, I know it is tungsten. Okay, it's a metal. If you keep on telling the children it's tungsten, what do they learn? And if suppose in an interview they go and say tungsten, then you know it's not understood. So maybe the interview takers, they will probably not give credit to that particular fellow, even if he or she is saying the right thing. So probably specific terms and technical terms also have to be told accurately. And at least, you know, if we are not saying perfect English, we don't have to for other subjects. Acceptable English. There's nothing is good English. Something is effective English. Communicative English is all about that. Effective English, general Indian English, and acceptable English. That's it. Bharat ma'am, I hope you agree with me.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
hope.
Yes, ma'am. I do agree with you, ma'am. Thank you very
Yes.
much for explaining
Yes.
this much.
And vernacular might come in. Who says vernacular can't come in? You know, when we talk of communicative English, we say that vernacular can come in to rescue when we at all can't manage. But to ma'am and to sir, all of you who are here, try at
Good,
least.
good afternoon, ma'am. This is Sadia Nasir from Sayyid Hamid Senior Secondary School.
Yes, ma'am.
I am teaching a group of students from science stream, PCB stream. The other group is PCM, and I teach humanities group also. Are there any special tips dealing with different lot so far as English teaching is concerned?
Good question, ma'am. Here you see your ESP will come into rescue. You see, when you are teaching the humanities stream, then the materials, we were so long talking about materials. The materials which you use, you can basically take up, you know, say, Ghalib, you can take up Faiz Ahmed Faiz, okay? You can take up poems, novels, extracts. And through that, you know, you teach vocabulary, grammar, you teach anything, reading, writing, listening. While you see when you are going into the science section, kindly use these kind of materials, you know, which I was showing you, that actually relates more to the learner. If you know, actually take a Keats, and of course, you know, English teaching books, like say a standard reader, government standard readers, nowadays they are taking pains to actually include materials from other subjects. But typical readers, they will use those kind of literature materials, which probably these kids might not feel relevant to them. So, ma'am, change the materials, change the approach also, ma'am. Teach them grammar, which is necessary. Teach them vocabulary, which is necessary. Teach them to speak, which might be useful for them, not flowery sentences in case of grammar. In case of science. In case of science, please teach them how to be direct and accurate. And for humanities, please teach them to be flowery if necessary, because they might need to talk at length. That's it, ma'am. That's it. So the approach and the material will change slightly, ma'am. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am and sir? I'm thoroughly enjoying.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, today's session has brought to my mind some of the things. Schools are not catering to ESP, although the ESP is one of the emerging needs of even the school-going students. For example, as an English teacher, I have been receiving feedback from other subject teachers, especially sciences, mathematics, that because of the weakness in language, our students are not performing well in mathematics and sciences. So, is there anything we can do, or government can came up with things like we can adjust our English syllabus to cater to the demands of other subjects?
Understood, sir. Thank you for the question, sir. Sir, you see, what actually is needed is an entire change of policy, sir, if you can agree with me. In the sense that, you see, when suppose it's a government school or a university school, the university can actually look into that the content of the syllabus, English syllabus, can actually cater to all kinds of students. So you see, while as I was talking to Sadia ma'am just before this, and you see, all kinds of subject matter must be brought in to teach English. And again, you see, along with that, suppose you are a history teacher, suppose. Ma'am was talking about, you see, history and English teaching. Can we actually push English a bit through history? It's possible. Like, say, I was showing you certain worksheets where you see, after you have done your entire teaching of history, you have left something for the innovation and the creation related to history, something as homework or something as project for your student. What you can do is that, sir, that project along with the history, the English colleague of yours, if you're a history teacher, with an English colleague of yours together, if time permits, if it's possible, the project, collaborative project, you can basically test your language as well as the English skills. That way, you can prepare them for the future life. Like, say, sir, let me share with you something which, all of you know, this Air India horrible, this crash which had happened, a few days ago. Let me tell you, I am associated as a trainer and rater for, aviation English. The Government of India Aviation, I am associated with them. And we actually teach the pilots and the air traffic controllers, see, how to use good and clear English. Precisely because, you see, because of this faulty English, garbled speech, lack of vocabulary, they are unable to use general English at all. Because of which many accidents, you will not believe me, sir, are happening. Only because of lack of knowing English. They're excellent as engineers, excellent in technical, having technical knowledge, but they do not know how to use English. Did I make sense, sir? So you see, the subject and English have to come together in some way or the other. According to me, sir. So I have been into these sectors.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes,
This is,
Lubna
excuse me,
ma'am.
ma'am, this is yes, Lubna Rubab from Minto Circle. Because they don't read, ma'am, that is why their vocabulary is weak. I feel like it, like this way. They don't read, they don't, good books, newspapers, they don't look up the meanings. Students, I'm talking about students, they don't look up at the meanings also. This is what I wanted to add to your session.
Ma'am, very
For
rightly pointed out,
fluency,
ma'am.
yes, ma'am, for fluency in English, we have to have. I think you agree with this, what I am
Yes,
talking.
I agree, ma'am. But I am also afraid, ma'am, that probably we'll never go back to a situation where in our childhood, like we had read, irrespective of what we will become when we grow up, we used to
Yes,
read a lot of storybooks.
we do lot of storybooks,
Storybooks.
lots of them. Enid Blyton, Nancy
Yes,
Drews, and all these were our childhood books, which we read it, and
yes,
we got from that. We
yes.
developed the English, our English from that,
Even
and even
vernacular, ma'am. Even vernacular, say any language,
yes,
any
social media
language.
also. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Social media was not there that time. We had to go through the books. We had to get newspapers. We underlined words, and then our language improved. From those reading habits, only our language improved. But here,
Ma'am, that is
nowadays,
what we
children do.
will never have, ma'am. We'll never have.
Yes.
That's why, ma'am, we are thinking
Uh,
of this ESP, where at least, ma'am, we can have teaching strategies. At least they'll know their own
yes.
language. At least
Yes,
for two subjects.
basically, ma'am, we have lessons related to other subjects also. So then we give examples in that, and when we go through the lessons and all that. This is Lubna Rubab from Into Circle. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, ma'am, too. Absolutely rightly pointed out. It's a major disease now. And we'll never cure this.
Yes, ma'am.
Never
Yes,
cure
ma'am.
this.
And we will not be able to until and unless children go through they have developed the reading habits and develop their vocabulary from that. Thank you, ma'am.
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, sir. So, yes, sir. I have. Yes.
Thank you for accepting our invitation at a very short notice and delivering so well. I hope this session would be beneficial for the subject teachers. I mean, different subject teachers are other than English, sciences, social sciences, and all. And I can see from the interactions that it has gone down well. Thank you so much.
And thank you, sir, too, for giving me this opportunity once again. And I think I'm permitted to leave, sir. And
Yes.
All the best to all the colleagues, participants, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all the participants for being regular and timely during the entire session. Probably we'll see you in the valedictory session when the schools open. That will be in the regular mode. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.